When the quiet black teen stepped onto the mat, no one knew he was the son of a karate legend. Then silence fell. If you enjoy intense stories like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's next. It was a regular Monday afternoon at school, loud and sunlit as always, until the noise collapsed in the middle of the basketball court. The chatter died, the bouncing ball stopped, and a strange, heavy silence sank into the crowd, forming a tight circle. At its center stood two figures facing off: Jaden, the only black kid in the grade, lean in a wrinkled white school shirt, still holding his math textbook, and Kyle, tall, broad-shouldered white with ripped athletic pants and eyes blazing with thrill. Jaden said nothing. He stood still, like cold granite. Across from him, a pack of hungry lions laughed, with Kyle leading the charge. Southridge High's unofficial king of humiliation. "Hey, trash!" Kyle sneered, stepping forward, pointing at Jaden's face. "You done pretending you're deaf yet? Or do you plan to cry before I punch your face in?" A hush fell over the court. Kyle's crew behind him erupted in snickers and jeers. A few students raised their phones, recording what they thought would be the perfect public takedown of the quiet black nerd. Jaden didn't flinch. He didn't move. "What, you gonna call your daddy to save you?" Kyle pressed on, voice low and venomous. That washed-up karate ghost. Thought he was dead in some broken-down gym. A loud ooh rippled through the crowd like a wave of gasoline over flame. But Jaden didn't blink. He lowered his book, looked Kyle in the eye, and said evenly, "I don't fight here." Kyle paused, then scoffed and laughed. "I didn't ask if you wanted to, I said you will. Either you're laid out or you run like always." Jaden turned and walked. One step, two, the laughter behind him exploded. "Coward. Classic slave move. Use that backpack as a shield." Jaden Kyle wasn't done. "Tell your dad, if he's got the guts, he should come show you how to throw a punch. Or better yet, just keep that whole damn family bowing down." Jaden stopped. His back stiffened. The crowd held its breath, but he kept walking. Didn't turn around. Didn't say a word. The sun cast a long, stretched-out shadow across the concrete as he disappeared into the school hallway, swallowed by silence. But back at the center of that circle, someone had crossed a line. And someone, maybe not just Jaden, had seen the look in his eyes. The look of someone who wasn't afraid to be hit, only waiting to be allowed to hit back. Classroom 204 felt more suffocating than ever. The math teacher kept lecturing, but no one was really listening. Eyes darted toward the back of the room, toward Jaden, the boy who'd chickened out of a fight or so. The rumor spreading like wildfire said. He sat silently at his desk, scribbling into a notebook, though not a single line was sticking in his mind. The echoes of shouting and laughter still rang in his ears. Kyle's words about his father were looping in his head like a poisoned chant. Every insult had landed like a clean uppercut to the chest. But it wasn't pain that kept Jaden quiet, it was calculation. He knew if he swung at the wrong time, even in self-defense, he wouldn't just be that black kid who lost it, he'd be the first suspension of the year. This school didn't need reasons to shut him down. It just needed excuses at lunch. Jaden sat alone in the farthest corner of the cafeteria where the lights flickered and the AC barely reached. No one sat near him. A few kids walked by on purpose, saying things loudly like, "Don't sit near him. Man, he's on some silent ninja stuff. And bet he's got a kunai in his lunchbox." The laughter that followed was sharp and cruel. Jaden didn't look up. He opened the lunch his mother had packed, cold rice and chopped fried egg, and quietly ate. At the center tables, Kyle was performing, retelling the epic showdown from that morning to a cheering crowd. His voice boomed like a TV announcer, exaggerating every detail, making up tears. Jaden didn't shed. His boys backed him up, laughing and pounding on the table. A teacher walked past, heard it all, and just smiled faintly. Moving on, no one asked if Jaden was okay. No one checked if Kyle was telling the truth. In this school, whoever spoke first was believed, and the loudest voice won. Later that afternoon, Jaden was cornered at the bike rack, Kyle again, this time without an audience. He leaned against a stolen bike arms, crossed eyes cold. "You've been dodging all day," he said, like talking to a misbehaving pet. "You think not fighting means it's over. I don't let things go." Jaden slung his backpack onto one shoulder. Eyes calm. "I told you I don't fight at school." Kyle stepped in close, forehead almost touching his. His voice dropped icy and low. "Then I'll find you somewhere you can't run, somewhere you think you're safe, and I'll crush you there." Jaden said nothing, but this time he didn't look away. His gaze didn't flicker, didn't drop, and for the first time, Kyle saw it. Not fear, not hate, just readiness. That night, Jaden came home later than usual. Their small apartment behind the car wash glowed dimly from the single kitchen bulb. Malik, his father, was polishing the wooden balcony that hung on the wall, a weapon Jaden wasn't allowed to touch until he turned 15. Something happened, Malik asked without looking. No, Jaden said, then paused. Actually, yeah. Malik turned toward his son, saying nothing. Jaden stepped forward, dropped his bag on the floor. They're holding the federal-level sports tournament soon. I think I want to join Malik. Didn't look surprised karate sparring. Yeah, that other boy's going to be there too. Most likely. You sure? Absolutely. Malik nodded slowly. He didn't smile, but his eyes lit up with something close to fire. Then starting tonight, we stopped training to defend. He pointed to the wooden sword. Time to learn how to finish. Jaden started waking up earlier than usual. While the sky was still dark and the streetlights were buzzing faintly, he was already standing barefoot on the cold tatami mat inside the small training room behind their apartment, the place where his father Malik had laid the first bricks of his discipline since Jaden was 8. It wasn't a fancy gym, no mirrors, no machines, just stained walls, worn-out floors, and the only sound that mattered, steady breathing, shifting feet, fists snapping against wood again. Malik said, his voice not loud but sharp enough to slice through hesitation. Jaden stepped forward, rotated his hips, delivered a clean roundhouse. Again, the second kick was faster, tighter. You're not the kid who hides anymore, Malik said, circling behind his son, tightening Jaden's wrist slightly. I taught you to evade to stay untouched, but now you need to learn to make every strike count when you hit it ends. Jaden nodded. No words, no complaint. Malik had once been a name in national karate circuits. Some said he'd taken out 3 opponents in a single tournament without a scratch. Others claimed he was invited to Japan to train Olympic candidates, but he disappeared from the spotlight and returned to a quieter life, reasons unknown. From the moment Jaden was old enough to throw a punch, Malik poured everything into shaping him, not like a father teaching his son, but like a warrior passing on an unfinished war. Written into blood, this strike is for when they push too deep. Malik demonstrated placing Jaden's fist right over the ribs, but only throw it if you're certain he can't step back. Otherwise, it's your opening, not his. These weren't just techniques. They were living instructions embedded into Jaden's bones. Every move, every pivot, every breath was a lesson in control. Not to fight for glory, but to make sure no one could crush you without paying for it. At school, Jaden kept his silence. Same seat at the back, same lonely lunch corner. But something had shifted. His eyes no longer flinched. His walk wasn't hesitant. When one of Kyle's friends lobbed a crumpled paper at his face during class, Jaden didn't react. He simply stared at the kid for 5 seconds. Just 5. But it was enough. That guy didn't sit anywhere near him for the rest of the week. On Friday, news of the federal-level tournament went up on the school bulletin board. Any student with attendance and health clearance could apply. Kyle, of course, was top pick for wrestling. The selections were nearly locked in. But one rainy afternoon, as the PE assistant was collecting the last applications, Jaden walked in, shirt-soaked, face unreadable, and handed in his form. She looked up, ready to dismiss him out of habit, but paused when she saw the category individual karate sparring. 60 coding class. Kyle heard the news within hours, and his grin that day wasn't just smug, it was bloodthirsty. Finally a chance to legally break you, he said in front of the class, laughter hidden behind menace. What he didn't realize was this. Jaden hadn't signed up to prove anything. He signed up because he knew exactly what the ring was, the only place where the rules belonged to the strike, and the strike was his. No one knew Jaden trained every morning. No one saw him running through the cold fog, pounding the wet pavement with steps that felt like stone. No one saw his nights ending, not with screams or laughter, but with minutes of silent stances. Legs trembling, breath steady, sweat dripping onto worn wooden floors. But soon they would, because when the tournament bracket was posted, Jaden Anderson's name appeared just 1 match away from Kyle Morton in the same bracket. And Kyle knew. He knew there was no escaping that collision. That afternoon, Kyle waited outside the reopened training gym, an old room now buzzing again, as the school dusted off its karate program after 2 years dormant. He didn't come alone. 2 of his goons flanked him, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Heard you signed up, Sal smirked, standing a tall voice loud enough to echo national level. Huh? You really think that backyard kung fu from your washed-up daddy's enough to step onto a real mat? Jaden stopped. No expression, no retreat. He looked Kyle in the eye, then stepped forward as if Kyle were nothing but a speed bump. But Kyle shoved an arm out to block his chest. I'm not done talking. Jaden stepped back. Not from fear, but because he understood one thing clearly. No strike gets thrown before the referee says so. From inside the gym, the door creaked open. A tall figure emerged, Malik black shirt, sandals, eyes sharp as glass. He stared at the boys outside, not with anger, but with a measured stillness. Kyle froze a split second. He had joked about this man, spread rumors, but now he was seeing the reality. Malik said nothing. He looked only at his son. Come in, he said, ignoring Kyle completely. Jaden obeyed. No one else dared speak. The air felt ready to shatter if anyone breathed wrong. The door shut. Inside, the dim lights cast the shadows of father and son onto the wall. Malik didn't speak right away. He watched Jaden breathe hard, heart still racing. He was about to strike, Malik said. Jaden nodded. You think you're ready? I am. Wrong, Malik stepped forward, pressed his hand onto Jaden's shoulder. Ready doesn't mean waiting. It means knowing the time has already come. Jaden met his father's eyes and for the first time saw not guidance but permission. A silent order. It's time, take him down, but by the rules with honor, so he never dares to stand over you again. That night, Jaden stood before the mirror. He looked into himself. The eyes were different now. The face no longer soft. Every kick, every punch drilled over the years wasn't just reflex anymore. It was instinct. He put on the old white gi that once belonged to Malik. The fabric had faded, but the stitching remained strong, just like his father's principles. When you step into the ring, Malik's voice echoed in his mind. Don't see him as the bully who humiliated you. See him as the opponent you were born to surpass. The first match of the federal qualifiers took place on a Saturday morning inside a gym larger than anywhere Jaden had ever stepped into. High ceilings, padded professional flooring, tiered spectator seating, and referees in full suits like they were running a televised national event. The atmosphere carried no laughter, no whispered gossip behind backs. Only sharp stares and silent focus. Here, no one cared who you were outside the ring. They only cared how you fought inside the 3 square meters that defined everything. Jaden stepped into the prep area wearing a clean white dye, fresh hand wraps, hair neatly tied back and eyes calm to the point of cold. No one recognized him as the quiet black kid once surrounded and humiliated in the middle of a high school courtyard. No one saw cowardice in him now because under the arena lights, Jaden wasn't a student, he was a fighter. His first opponent was Reyes, a bulky competitor from another district with 3 years of experience and a silver medal from last season. When Jaden stepped onto the mat, Reyes' coach muttered, a new kid, defensive posture, watch for lucky swings. Reyes smirked. Jaden stood still across from him, feet slightly apart, arms relaxed. The referee signaled for the match to begin. Reyes charged immediately, classic opening blitz. A straight punch aimed at Jaden's chest flew forward with full force, but Jaden didn't flinch. He leaned sideways, feather light, letting the strike slip past his sleeve like wind. Before anyone could register the movement, Jaden pivoted and snapped a low roundhouse into Reyes' shin, not powerful enough to injure, but clean and sharp enough to break his balance. Reyes stumbled backward. The referee didn't award a point, but murmurs began echoing from the seats. Jaden didn't chase. He stood his ground. His eyes didn't burn with rage, they glinted with calculation. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He was simply making it clear. If you continue, you will break. Reyes recovered and advanced again more cautiously now, but Jaden had already read him like a book. Left shoulder dips before attacking. Right foot shifts an inch before lunging. In the remaining 40 seconds, Jaden landed 3-point scoring hits, a precise shot to the chest, a sweeping strike to the opponent's right arm, and a final spinning kick to the rib. None were flashy. All were flawless. Each was a message. I didn't come here to test myself. I came to win. When the referee signaled the end, Jaden bowed with perfect form. Reyes dropped to the mat, panting, face flushed in disbelief. His coach said nothing. He simply watched the quiet boy walk off the mat slowly, solidly, without acknowledging the crowd, without smiling, without waving. Like this match was just another brick in a structure only he could see. And in the bleachers where a few students from Jaden's school sat, someone finally whispered, "Wait, that's Jaden." Since when could he fight like that? Jaden didn't celebrate after his first win. He returned to the prep room, unwrapped his hands, and sat on a plastic chair in the far corner. No one spoke to him, no one congratulated him, but glances began landing on him more often. Every coach who passed by gave him a second longer look. A few referees exchanged brief words and tight nods. The name Jaden Anderson was no longer just some new kid on the bracket. It was becoming a quiet buzz, tense and rising. Who's number 17? He's not on the national registry. That timing, it's clean to the breath. His second match came barely an hour later. The opponent, KG, a representative from a major northern city's team with a thick competition record, 3 medals and a recent backup spot on the junior national squad, KG stepped onto the mat with the air of someone warming up. He bowed properly, but his eyes said this was routine. Jaden's face didn't shift. He bowed back, got into stance, no words, no waste. The signal rang and KG launched, straight into a rapid-fire combo, punch parry, hook low, kick. All textbook, all clean, but to Jaden every move felt like slow motion. He blocked 3 out of 4, dodged the last with a backward step, measured to the centimeter. Then came his counter, a single hand sweep that broke KG's rhythm completely. A precise hook to the shoulder knocked the taller fighter off balance. And in that beat of instability, Jaden pivoted and slammed a side kick into KG's ribs. Not the fastest strike, but so unexpected it landed flush. KG staggered back, slipped and dropped to one knee. The referee paused the match. First point, Jaden. The crowd went silent for one beat, then murmurs rose, and in the upper seats, Kyle sat with his arms crossed, jaw tight. He had shown up that morning for one reason, to laugh when Jaden got crushed, but now he wasn't laughing. His eyes narrowed, his fingers curled. One of the school's assistant coaches leaned over and asked, "That kid, he's from your school?" Kyle gave a slight nod. Didn't speak. Jaden won the second match 3-0, not a single point lost. The head referee shook his hand after the match, something he only did for fighters who showed tactical precision. Jaden nodded and walked off the mat. Oh, smile. No waves, still cold, still composed. Up in the stands, a student recorded the match and posted it online with the caption, "Who the hell is Jaden Anderson?" The clip spread across their school in under 30 minutes. Kids who had thrown paper at him, who'd laughed, who once called him Jaden. The statue were now scrambling for answers. Is that really him? Dude? That kick would have sent someone to the ER, but Jaden didn't care. He rewrapped his hands, sat back in his quiet corner, took a sip of water and closed his eyes. He didn't check his phone, didn't care what was being said, because in his mind, one thing was growing clearer. With each breath, he was getting closer to the match that needed to be finished. The third match took place early in the afternoon, and by then the bleachers weren't sparse anymore. What had been empty rows now filled halfway with students from neighboring schools drawn by rumors of some quiet black kid wrecking the bracket. Some brought phones and live streamed for friends who couldn't make it. The name Jaden Anderson was no longer passed around with mockery. It was now spoken with tension. Even the announcer paused for a beat before calling out, "Fighter Jaden Anderson, representing Southridge District." Up in the stands, Kyle leaned against a steel railing, pulled low, but no one could mistake those eyes locked sharp, wolf-like. Watching the prey he could no longer cage, one of the assistant coaches tried to keep things casual. "He's good," the coach said, "but you're bigger, stronger." More experienced, Kyle didn't respond. He was studying every strike, every twitch of Jaden's wrist, unblinking. His knuckles had gone white. Jaden's third opponent came from a Central City athletic academy, black belt, a full head taller, and built like a middleweight boxer. But Jaden didn't back down. When the bell rang, he shifted left, entered, stance, and waited. This opponent was different. He didn't charge, didn't swing wild. He moved like someone who thought 3 moves ahead. What he didn't know was Jaden didn't fight by textbook. He fought by heartbeat. The entire match was cerebral. Jaden didn't throw many strikes. He baited, sidestepped, studied, predicted. And when he struck, it was always at the exact second the opponent was least able to defend. A spinning elbow right after a mistimed stance switch. A snapping kick just as the other fighter thought Jaden was off rhythm. A palm heel strike to the chest, not a common technique, but hard enough to knock the air out of his opponent's lungs. The match ended 3-0. Again, no one in the bleachers clapped loudly. Not because it wasn't impressive, but because they were stunned. They had just witnessed someone fight without looking like they were fighting. It was like watching a machine get dismantled piece by piece, no rage, no rush, no fear. Just precision that made your spine cold. Kyle stood up and left before the final bow. He didn't want to watch. Not out of fear, but because there was a feeling creeping in. One he didn't have a name for. It wasn't hate. It wasn't contempt. It was doubt. Doubt about himself. Behind the arena, Malik stood quietly, arms folded, leaning against a concrete wall. He said nothing, but as Jaden walked past him, he gave a single nod. Not approval, not praise. Just a silent message. The rhythm's right. Hold the fire until it's time to burn. That evening, the air inside the gym was thick with something unspoken. The lights hadn't changed, the people were the same, but there were more whispers, now more darted glances at exactly 6:00 p.m. The official semi-final bracket was posted, and there it was at the top of the right side. Jaden Anderson versus Kyle Morton. No more waiting, no more maybes, no more if they meet, or probably won't make it that far. The semi-final tomorrow was real, and those who had witnessed the unfinished showdown between them back on the schoolyard were now being handed front row seats to the sanctioned version. No blurry phone clips, no shouting crowds. Just two people, one mat and rules that allowed everything to end in under 3 minutes. When the bracket went up, a group of students crowded around the big screen in the public waiting area. One of them shouted, "Yo, Jaden's fighting Kyle for real. How'd they end up together? Not random. Based on points. They're the top of the bracket, so this was fate." The curiosity turned to tension. Everyone could see it now. Kyle might be bigger, but Jaden was no longer the quiet student they thought they could shove around. In the athletes' prep room, Jaden sat facing a faded wooden wall, hands resting on his knees, eyes half closed, breathing steady. No one disturbed him. Malik stood a few meters away, silent. He didn't need to speak. Jaden didn't need instructions anymore, because from this point on, it wasn't training. It wasn't prediction. This was real. This was ending one chapter to open another. In the next room, Kyle slammed his fist into the wall, leaving a dent. He'd just rewatched Jaden's third match. Nothing was wrong with the video. Nothing was fake. He knew those kicks, those punches, that footwork. None of it was luck. He had bullied Jaden thinking he was weak, but the image of Jaden walking into that ring, calm, cold, grounded, had haunted him all day. A worry, a feeling he didn't recognize. And that made him furious, not at Jaden, at himself. Because for the first time, he wasn't sure he could win. The organizers called both fighters to sign off on the next day's match. 9:00 a.m. Main mat, they both signed. Jaden said nothing. He folded the paper and stood. His eyes met Kyle's, not with challenge, not with fear. Just the look of someone who already knew what was coming. Tomorrow's match wasn't just between two students. It was between two worlds. One built on dominance and one built on endurance. And for the first time since this tournament began, the entire room went quiet. No one dared make a prediction. 9:00 a.m., the gym was fully lit. The stands packed tight like it was a championship final. It was only the first semifinal of the day, but clearly the one the entire tournament had been waiting for. Everyone who had seen Jaden's 3 clean wins, everyone who had watched Kyle crush opponents in under a minute, they weren't just curious anymore. They needed to see this fight, knowing it wouldn't be like anything before Jaden stepped onto the mat with a face carved from stone, perfectly pressed belt, tied tight eyes. Unshaken, Kyle emerged from the opposite tunnel, cracking his knuckles into his palm. Jaw locked in stone, they stood 6 meters apart. Eyes locked, the referee read through the rules quickly. 3 minutes first to full points or valid knockdown wins. Neither of them nodded. Neither responded. But everyone watching knew this wasn't just a match. This was a verdict. The bell rang. The arena held its breath. Kyle moved first. He advanced fast, throwing a hammer-like straight punch at Jaden's shoulder. But Jaden didn't back up. He pivoted, absorbed it with his elbow, and countered instantly with a palm parry that made Kyle pause. A murmur rippled through the crowd. No one expected Jaden to meet power with power from the first second. But he wasn't just meeting it, he was measuring it. Kyle smirked, then spun into a sidekick aimed at Jaden's torso, faster, stronger than anything he'd used before. The kick connected, pushing Jaden back a step. No point given, but Jaden's face didn't change. Calm, still waiting. He knew Kyle thrived when opponents feared him, and so Jaden's composure was his first strike. 10 seconds later, Kyle charged again. 3-hit combo, punch, parry, high kick. The parry missed. The kick clipped Jaden's shoulder, but in that fraction of a second, as Kyle's leg was still retracting, Jaden dropped low, spun, and cracked a roundhouse into Kyle's calf. The sound of the strike hitting clean echoed like a whip crack. Kyle staggered, clutching his leg, his face twisting. The referee signaled 1-0. Jaden applause erupted, not out of surprise this time, but recognition. And in that moment, Kyle's eyes changed. He wasn't smiling anymore. No smugness, just calculation, wariness. Maybe even doubt. Jaden saw it, and that he knew was the real beginning. He didn't need to win in 10 seconds. He didn't need to knock Kyle out in round 1. He just needed Kyle to understand, if you want to stand in this ring with me, you're going to fight harder than you ever have in your life. Kyle was breathing heavier after Jaden's first scoring kick. He hadn't expected the counter to be that sharp, like a blade slicing straight through his pride, but he wasn't done. He wasn't used to trailing in a match. Never had been. Jaden reset his stance, calm, unhurried. He didn't rush the momentum, didn't attack just because he had the lead. Instead, he waited. The longer he waited, the heavier the pressure on Kyle became. The crowd around them grew silent. The cheers turned into quiet tension, because the audience wasn't just watching a fight anymore. They were watching two entire worlds collide second by second, breath by breath. Kyle switched strategy. He stopped charging and started circling, looking for an opening, but Jaden offered none. He kept the distance, exact close enough to strike far enough to avoid a trap. His eyes stayed locked not on Kyle's face or fists, but on his chest, because Jaden knew when the chest turns, the strike is coming. Kyle made a move, 2 quick steps forward, a feinting hook, then spun into his signature back kick, the one that had ended 3 matches before. But Jaden didn't bite. The instant Kyle's right leg shifted back for rotation, Jaden slipped forward, diagonally dropped low, pivoted, and swept Kyle's legs clean from behind the knee. Thud. Kyle crashed onto the mat shoulder first. The referee rushed in to halt the action. The stands exploded, but Jaden didn't react. He stepped back to position, expression unchanged. Kyle pushed himself upright, blood at the corner of his mouth, eyes locked on Jaden, not with fury but with shock, and something dangerously close to panic, the judges conferred. It wasn't a knockout. Kyle had fallen from imbalance, not a direct blow, but the move was clean, controlled, and technically flawless. The scoreboard blinked 2-0. Jaden. From the coaching bench, one of the rival trainers murmured, "This kid's not self-taught. He was trained in blood." In another corner of the bleachers, a group of South Ridge students huddled over a live stream. One whispered, "Wasn't he the one they used to mess with?" Yeah, and now he's making Kyle die slowly in front of the whole state. Inside Kyle's head, things were unraveling. He remembered Jaden in the schoolyard, silent, hunched, getting mocked, shoved, challenged, and saying nothing. He'd thought that was weakness. But now that same quiet boy was standing in front of him, same stare, same silence. But each strike landed like it had been forged from every insult ever thrown his way. Every step seemed to stomp on years of humiliation. Kyle stood. The referee signaled to continue, but everyone watching could feel it. One fighter was swinging to save his reputation. The other was striking to reclaim an entire identity. There were 1 minute and 20 seconds left on the clock. Not long, but in a match where every second was a mental war, it felt like a lifetime. Kyle stumbled back into position, his right hand trembling slightly, his left leg no longer pressing with the same confidence. Jaden stood across from him, still as stone, like he hadn't burned a drop of energy the entire match. The whistle blew again. This time Kyle didn't attack right away. He circled, searching, but there was no longer certainty in his steps. No aura of dominance. Jaden remained locked in his eyes, following every tiny motion. The crowd had gone silent. The arena felt like it was waiting for something to explode. Then Kyle charged. No finesse, no plan. Just a full-body punch driven by frustration, fear, and the rage of being outmatched. A sledgehammer thrown from pure desperation. Jaden didn't flinch. He raised both arms, deflected the strike off angle, slipped left, then snapped a clean reverse punch to Kyle's chest. Not hard, not flashy, but perfectly timed. Thud. Kyle hit the mat again. The referee rushed in. Malik, standing in the distance, didn't blink. Jaden stepped back, composed, waiting. But this time Kyle didn't get up right away. He gasped for air, sweat pouring down. His right hand dug into the floor. Trembling, he wasn't hurt, he was confused. He looked at Jaden and no longer saw a bullied kid. He saw a fighter. Someone who wasn't fighting for points, but because he would never let himself be stepped on again. The ref counted to 7. Kyle forced himself up unsteady. The match resumed. Jaden breathed slow. He wasn't tired, he wasn't frantic. Every movement inside him felt synced like clockwork, refined by years of being silenced. The next strike, if needed, could end it all. But Jaden wasn't rushing. 30 seconds left. Kyle threw 2 more attacks, both wild, both off target. Jaden didn't counter. He waited. And with 10 seconds remaining, Kyle's shoulders dropped, a visible moment of surrender. That was when Jaden took a single step forward. No punch, no kick, just one step, face to face, eyes locked. And Kyle stepped all back, the final buzzer sounded. The crowd shot to their feet, but Jaden didn't raise his hands, didn't cheer. He just bowed, then walked off the mat. Behind him, Kyle stood motionless, lost in a silence louder than any applause. Because they hadn't just witnessed a victory, they had seen a shift in power from the boy once ignored to the one who made the entire arena hold its breath. The moment Jaden stepped off the mat, the arena erupted. Applause, shouts, cheers from people who didn't even know who they were rooting for, only that they'd just witnessed something that transcended sport. It was a story buried in silence, finally unleashed into light, undeniable and unfiltered. But Jaden didn't turn around, didn't raise his hand, didn't smile. He walked straight through the tunnel behind the ring where Malik stood waiting, arms crossed, expression unreadable. They looked at each other for a second. No words, just a single nod, sharp, heavy, and full of everything they didn't need to say out loud. Back on the mat, Kyle was still standing alone. The referee approached, asking if he needed help down. He shook his head, nodded once, then walked down the steps in silence. No one laughed, no one booed, but the silence itself was louder than any judgment. Below the stands, students who once hailed Kyle as a hero lowered their eyes. Those who joined in mocking Jaden now avoided looking at each other. The fight's footage spread online within minutes, a kick, a punch. Jaden's eyes, no edits, no music. Just truth made visible. The boy they had ignored had forced an entire system to look back at itself. That evening, with the tournament paused before the final day, Jaden sat alone in a small hotel room. Dim light, an unopened water bottle, his GI neatly folded, his phone buzzed constantly on the desk. Messages not just from classmates, but strangers. Who are you? Where did you come from? What happened at Southridge? Jaden read every line, replied to none he didn't need to. The match had said it all. Malik sat beside him, opened a can, set it on the table. Tomorrow's the final, he said, voice even. You might win, you might not. But starting today, everyone who speaks your name will do it with respect. Jaden nodded, not in agreement, in affirmation he knew. He had already felt it on their faces, in their eyes, when he walked off that mat earlier. They no longer saw a quiet black kid lost in a whitewashed high school. They saw a man who made the world go silent with one fist. The next morning, no sun, no rain, just a heavy gray sky hanging over the stadium roof, as if it knew something serious was coming. The final match was scheduled for 10 p.m. The arena had been cleaned, lights adjusted brighter than usual, and the organizers had installed a close-up camera to stream everything to the big screen. The air carried an odd sense of formality, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something more than just a match. Jaden stood in the waiting room, eyes closed, ears tuned to the soft shuffle of shoes in the hallway, murmurs from judges, the distant swell of a crowd filling seats. But it all faded. In his mind, there was no image of Kyle, no mocking laughter, no lonely lunches. That was all behind him. Ahead was something blank, a ring with no hate left to burn. And that was the real test. He'd fought because he'd been cornered. He'd countered because he had to prove he wasn't weak anymore. But today, with the whole arena waiting for him to finish the story, a question echoed in him. Does this need to end with another punch? His opponent was Armin, the reigning champion of the Eastern bracket, black belt, strong, precise, composed. Not like Kyle, Armin didn't underestimate Jaden. In fact, he looked at him like an equal. When they stepped onto the mat, Armin bowed first, his expression full of respect. Jaden bowed back slowly, his eyes no longer burning, but steady, focused like someone who now knew that winning wasn't just about who gets knocked down. The crowd fell silent. They took their places, the referee signaled. The final match began, not with fireworks, but with quiet tension. They circled each other like wolves who knew the other had fangs. No reckless moves, no roaring fans, just footsteps on the mat, breathing in a pressure that filled every inch of air. Armin struck first, a clean roundhouse, fast and tight. Jaden stepped back, spun, dodged cleanly, then countered with a straight punch to the chest. It didn't hit hard, it didn't score, but it made Armin pause. They locked eyes. And both understood this fight wasn't like the others. There was no fear, no rage, only technique and respect. Malik watched from afar, seeing it all. He said nothing, but his gaze softened. He knew Jaden had gone further than any quiet, overlooked kid was ever expected to. But now at this moment, when no anger remained, when there was nothing left to prove, would he still know how to wield the blade inside him? Or would he return to being that soft, silent boy? Jaden didn't know the answer. But he knew this every second left in this match would test not his fists, but his control. Armin wasn't easy to overwhelm. After Jaden's light counter, he quickly reset his stance, moving with precision. Every step, like a chess piece placed with intent, Jaden didn't retreat. He matched each step carefully, not pushing, not fleeing. The space between them stayed consistent, not to avoid strikes, but to preserve respect. They traded blows like composing a duet through motion. Armin went for a low kick. Jaden deflected. Armin threw a hook. Jaden slipped, then tagged his calf with a counter kick. Neither scored cleanly, but every exchange was clear. I see you, and I do not underestimate you. The audience gradually quieted. They were no longer waiting for a knockout. They sat up straighter, watching closely. This match wasn't about who was stronger. It was about who could stay true to themselves to the final second. At the 90-second mark, Jaden shifted. He began moving faster, not waiting but controlling the pace. His first strike clipped Armin's arm, the second grazed his shoulder. No points scored, but enough to push Armin back a few steps. The sound of shoes sliding echoed across the mat. The referee stayed alert. Armin understood Jaden was starting to own the tempo. But what surprised Armin the most wasn't the speed or the technique. It was the mindset. Jaden didn't react when he landed blows. No celebration, no change in expression. His eyes reflected absolute clarity, like he was holding a conversation with himself mid-fight. Keep going. Not from anger, not for victory, but to prove that I can control everything, even the urge to finish it fast, Armin. Armin gave a small nod, then he smiled briefly, as if to say, I get it. Then he attacked. They clashed. This time it was real contact, strike for strike, block for block. Each fighter landed light touches, nothing heavy but sharp enough for the referee to yell, break and wave them apart, both step. A score still unchanged, 0-0. But the entire arena understood they were witnessing something that didn't need points to declare a winner. Malik remained still, lips pressed, eyes shining in a way they hadn't all tournament. He had trained Jaden to win, but now he was watching his son do something greater, fight to master himself. Only 40 seconds remained. The scoreboard still read, no points, no knockdowns. But the entire arena could feel it. This match was building toward a different kind of ending, one where the last strike wouldn't decide a winner, but reveal who deserved to be believed. Armin launched forward again, not to score, but to issue one final challenge. A lightning-fast right hook followed by a sweeping kick from the left. Jaden blocked the punch, slid right to dodge the kick, and in that split second, he saw the opening, a clean gap between Armin's ribs and hip, prime for a match-ending strike. One move, that's all it would take. A decisive kick, clean and sharp, he'd win the match. Explosive applause, his champion title, undeniable proof that he hadn't just survived prejudice, he had conquered the entire tournament. But he didn't strike. Jaden saw the window, felt the perfect footwork line up. But he held back for half a heartbeat, long enough for Armin to reset and step back. They squared off again. The referee didn't understand. The crowd didn't. But Malik did, because in that single moment, Jaden had made a choice. He didn't need the knockout, didn't need the exclamation mark. Everyone who needed to understand already did, and the opponent he came here to defeat was no longer in front of him. He'd left that person behind. The final whistle blew. The referee stepped in, consulting with the judges. With no clear score, the match would be decided by overall impression, technique, control, initiative, and sportsmanship. While they deliberated, Jaden and Armin stood face-to-face, shirts, soaked breaths, shallow eyes locked. No anger, no regret, only mutual respect. The referee turned back, raised his hand, and pointed toward Jaden. The crowd erupted, but Jaden didn't leap, didn't shout, he simply bowed, slow, steady. Then turned to Armin and offered his hand. Armin took it, gripped it firmly, and said just loud enough for Jaden to hear, "You won because you didn't need to." That afternoon, after the tournament officially ended, Jaden sat alone on the back steps of the arena. The medal hung loosely around his neck, its gold dulled in the late sunlight. No crowds rushed him for selfies, no chants echoed. Just a quiet breeze brushing across his sweat-drenched shirt. And a strange calm, as if he had walked through a storm no one else believed was real. Malik joined him, sitting silently beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Then he placed a hand on Jaden's shoulder, giving it a light squeeze. "You know you didn't win today because you were the strongest," he said quietly. "You won because you chose not to finish it when everyone expected you to." Jaden kept his eyes forward, staring at the light stretching across the concrete. "I don't need them to fear me anymore," he said softly. "I just want them to stop. Stop judging. Stop labeling. Stop looking at me like I have to bow to be allowed to exist." Malik nodded slowly, as if he'd waited years to hear that answer. The next day, Jaden returned to school. No one blocked him at the gates, no paper balls in class, no mocking impressions. When he spoke, everything was quiet. Not the isolating silence he once knew, but the silence of acceptance. The same faces that once sneered now looked away. Some nodded slightly as they passed. Someone pulled out the empty chair beside him at lunch. A teacher called his name more clearly in roll call. No praise, no one called him a hero. And Jaden didn't need them to. Because from the moment he stepped off that mat yesterday, he understood the world doesn't change with a punch. It changes when you make people face themselves when they have nothing left to hide behind. That night, Jaden took the medal from his neck and hung it on a hook by the door. He didn't show it off, didn't take pictures, didn't post it online. He sat on the old training mat behind his home, closed his eyes, breathed evenly, and for the first time in years, he wasn't training to defend. He wasn't training to fight back. He was just training to stay himself. Among them, from bullied student to fighter who earned respect, Jaden forced an entire tournament to see him differently, without rage, without revenge. Thank you for watching till the end. If this story moved you, please like and share the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest uploads.